Now let's go to Ruth chapter 4. We're going to end our series today. I'm going to read the chapter. You can follow along on your Bibles or your devices, or you can follow along on the screen behind me as well. Ruth 4, verse 1 says this: Now Boaz had gone up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the Redeemer of whom Boaz had spoken came by. So Boaz said, "Turn aside, friend, sit down." And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, sit down here. So they sat down. Then he said to the Redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belongs to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know, for there is no one besides you to redeem it, and I come after you." And he said, "I will redeem it." Then Boaz said, "The day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance." Then the Redeemer said, "I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it." Now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one drew off his sandal, he took off his sandal and gave it to the other. And this was the manner of attesting in Israel, like signing a contract. When the Redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it for yourself," he drew off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "You are witness this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers and from the gate of his native place. You are witnesses this day." Then all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, "We are witnesses." And then they go, "May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephrathah and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this woman." Verse 13, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the woman said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer. And may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Aminadab. Aminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. Would you close your eyes for just a moment, one more time? Let me pray. God, this is your word, and it's your living and breathing word. And I pray, God, that you will speak to us through it today. We want to hear your voice and be open to what you want to teach us today. And not only listen, but take it in and look for opportunities to apply it. So I pray that you will give us that desire, that boldness, that ability to not only listen, but to be doers of your words. Speak to us, I pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. So if you recall in chapter 3, I think it's important to start at the end of chapter 3, because then we understand what what Boaz was doing there at the gate. But Ruth went down to the threshing floor, and that's where Boaz was sleeping. And she comes in the middle of the night, and she laid down at his feet. And so he's startled, and he wakes up, and he's like, who is there? And so she says, it's Ruth. And the conversation goes on, and she asks him to redeem her. So Boaz, he praises Ruth for her attitude. He says, you could have looked for a young man, and you didn't. And he's praising her for her worthiness, and he commits to doing what she is asking. Okay? He tells her that she will be redeemed either by him or by another redeemer, another relative that is actually closer, nearer than him. He had to go first. He had to start with him. So we see the word redeemer and redeem show up a bunch of times. And what does that mean? Well, the word redeem means to gain or regain possession of something in exchange for payment. That's what redeeming means. It means to pay the necessary amounts to clear a debt, okay? Or to set free by paying a price. So in ancient Israel, the Kinsman-redeemer law was given with the purpose to preserve a dead man's family name and to protect his property from being sold outside the tribe or the clan. So why did she need a kinsman-redeemer? Well, because Naomi and Ruth were poor. They could not afford to pay for the land. They could not purchase the land. So they didn't have the means to redeem it, so they needed someone to redeem it on their behalf. So now we understand Boaz is at the gate. That's how we started the chapter. He had gone up to the gate after that conversation. He spent the night. He wakes up. He goes to the gate, and he's waiting for that redeemer. And I think it's fascinating that we see here, first that we see Boaz's noble, his God-fearing character being reaffirmed. First thing he goes and does what he had promised Ruth. He keeps his word to her, right? He says, this is going to be solved today. So he's at the gate, just hoping to get the matters settled. Now think about this. He's just there at the gate. It wasn't a meeting scheduled. He didn't call somebody and says, hey, can you get the other guy to come? We really need to talk to him. He's just there. And just by chance, that guy happened to be passing by. And I just think about that, right? The same way that Ruth happened to be harvesting at Boaz's field back at chapter 2, like we said, and we saw. So it was nothing but God's providential circumstances, right? The guy is coming by, and so he gives the other redeemer first dibs, right? He says, you have priority. You have to decide. So he preserves his reputation, Boaz does, his godly character, even at the risk of losing Ruth. Because he's saying, hey, if the guy says yes, I'm not going to have her. But he says this is the right thing to do. It had to start with him. So in other words, he waited on the Lord. He didn't know what the outcome would be. He was following the Lord every step of the way. He was being a man of character. And he says, I'm going to do what's right. But he waited on the Lord to accomplish what he started. Just think about that. We waited on the Lord for him to accomplish what he started. So when you're waiting in this waiting period, don't just try to go and fix it for him, because he does it. He is at work. And we trust and we let go and we depend on him to do what he needs to do. So no matter the direction here, God would redeem Ruth and Naomi, whether it by Boaz or not. He trusted the Lord was going to accomplish his purposes. He trusted the Lord unreservedly. And so he goes on verse 4. I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of my people. And then the guy goes, I will redeem it. If you will redeem it, then redeem it. But if you will not, tell me that I may know, for there is no one besides you to redeem it. Redeem it, and I come after you. So the guy says, all right, I'll do it. I'll redeem it. And I'm just thinking, maybe Boaz is like, oh no, right? I mean, Ruth, I can't believe it. I mean, maybe I'm losing her, right? He's like, I wasn't expecting that response. Right? I mean, he could have done it. Nobody knew about it. I mean, she was there already that night. She asked him to redeem her. Well, he could have just finished the whole transaction. Why did I ask in the first place, right? It's like one of those why did I ask? If I hadn't asked him this week, we're getting ready for the signs for the village. For our new signs here, and we had to go to the village and ask for permission because we thought, well, there's no electrical involved. The sign company thought, you guys can go ahead and install it. And then we're like, well, do we need to call? And John says, well, I think we need to call. And we asked, and the answer was, no, you can't without getting a permit. And we're like, oh, it's only 1 week away. He goes, we're just going to have to wait. Like, oh, why did we ask, right, John? We could have done it, right? So he's like, well, God is at work, but God is at work. God is accomplishing his purposes. And he is at work in this place as well, in this situation here. God had everything under control. And then, I think it's really cool, Boaz reads then the fine print, right? When you're buying something on Groupon or you're opening a bank account, you get $150, and then you have this big thing of fine print. You have to keep your account for a year and a half, right? Or you buy one cell phone, you get one, but you got to really have to be with them for 36 months or something. That's the fine print, right? This promotional buy one, get one free. So it says there's a fine print. So Boaz, smart Boaz, goes and reads the fine print. He says, the day you buy the field from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. In other words, when you buy the field from Naomi, you also get Ruth, along with the responsibility to have children with her to carry on the family inheritance. Naomi is of age, so you won't have children with Naomi. That was maybe why the guy says, I can do it. But with Ruth, you have to have children with her so that you can perpetuate the name of the family. So then the Redeemer pulls out, right? He says, no way, I can't do that. I can't buy the land and take care of both Naomi and Ruth. And I don't want my own inheritance to be threatened. Because he's thinking, if he had a son by Ruth, and that son was his only surviving heir, Mahlon's property, the one that he is investing money to purchase here, and part of his own estate would go to Elimelech's family because of the son, because of the heir. So he says, you can have my right of redemption and redeem it yourself. Now, can you picture Boaz's excitement? I think he had to really be like all professional. I don't know, just like, hey, thank you so much, appreciate it. And I don't know how that went, but just he had to refrain from showing his enthusiasm right in front of all the elders. But I'm sure he was filled with joy inside. The kind of joy when you get good news about something. And then you have to say, thank you. And you get to the car and you go, wow, I got it. Like one of those things. And it's an exam that you pass. And then you're just thanking the person very politely. And then you get to the car and then you're so excited about it. And it's like when I heard that my offer on the house had been accepted. Right? I was like talking to the guy on the phone and I said, thank you, appreciate it. And then I get to the car and I'm just, yes. And this is what my boys did when they heard it from me. It's like, yes. Right? I mean, just, yes, we got it. Right? I mean, just imagine Boaz, if he could, like, yes. He said, no, I got Ruth. Though Boaz was thrilled with the outcome, I want us to also remember that it's important here that the commitment that he's making to Ruth and Naomi is very costly. This is not just like, hey, I got Naomi. He is investing out of his own money. He is purchasing land, and it required really an act of love and sacrifice. He's willingly giving part of his inheritance. That's the cost to buy the land for their sake, okay? And who is Boaz a picture of, right? Who is he a picture of? He's a picture of Jesus. Jesus, in a much more significant way, he gave up his life for our sake, a very costly sacrifice to purchase, to redeem us as well, right? Now, can you see God at work at every turn? Consider the beginning of this story for a moment. Due to a famine in Bethlehem, remember this story? Elimelech takes his wife, Naomi, their 2 sons, to the pagan country of Moab. There was a famine. They're fleeing from a difficulty. They go to Moab. And then their sons marry Moabite women. And then Elimelech dies, 1 widow. And then years later, 2 sons die, 3 widows. Okay, Naomi is hopeless. Ruth, one of the daughters-in-law, she abandons everything. She moves back to Bethlehem with Naomi. She makes a commitment to follow the one true God. There was no hope. There was no promising future. She just decides that she's not going to leave her alone. She's going to go back. That's the tragedy. That's the situation that is taking place. Naomi and Ruth arrive in Bethlehem Naomi feeling defeated, right? But God takes Naomi and Ruth from tragedy to triumph. He takes them from tragedy to triumph. Let's begin with Ruth. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. She was a widow. She came not knowing what was going to happen to her life, what her future would look like. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Now think about this. Ruth, the Moabite, the widow, she becomes Ruth, the wife of Boaz, a wealthy man who is a man of godly character. She left Moab with no guarantee of a promising future, but she made the best choice one can make as she abandoned her false gods and placed her faith in the one true God. She trusted him with her future and acknowledged his providential care through every circumstance she faced. Ruth placed her faith in God, and a full reward was given to her by the Lord, under whose wings she took refuge. From tragedy to triumph. Now let's look at the end of the story for Naomi. Then the woman said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel." The woman rightly attributed the blessing of Naomi's grandchild to the Lord. It wasn't just Boaz, nice guy, did it. No, it was the Lord who did it. He alone is deserving of glory and praise and honor. He sovereignly orchestrated all the details of their lives, and through his power, he accomplished his purposes. And then they say, he shall be, this child shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Now remember, Naomi was telling Ruth back in Moab, stay behind, don't come. Right? And here, they're recognizing your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more than 7 sons. And this child is a restorer of life. He's bringing back everything that you lost, and he is a nourisher of your old age, meaning he's going to take care of you when you get older. What a provision from the Lord. What an amazing providential circumstance that took her to that place. And now here's what is fascinating to me. Remember when the Israelites, they were about to overtake the promised land, and they sent the 2 spies into Jericho. Remember that story? Joshua, right? The 2 spies were protected by a prostitute in that city. What's her name? Rahab, right? Do you know who Rahab's son is? Boaz. That's Boaz. I mean, think about this. Think about God just moving pieces and working things out and orchestrating details. So think of where you are today. Do you understand where you are today? Maybe not, but God is moving pieces and orchestrating details. And then sometime in the future, or today, or 5 years, or 10, or 15 from today, God will accomplish his purposes if you just remain faithful and trusting that he is a God who is sovereign over all things. That's Boaz, the son of a prostitute. He became a God-fearing man with an outstanding character and a heart of compassion. He is at the right place when Ruth arrives. And then he just gives everything, and he opens his arms to welcome them. He served the Lord faithfully, and God blessed him and used him to redeem Ruth and restore Naomi's fortune. Boaz and Ruth had a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now you fast forward to the book of Matthew. In the genealogy of Jesus, we find Rahab, and we find Boaz and Obed and Jesse and King David. And what an amazing display, again, of God's providential care. He's never ceasing trustworthiness and his amazing grace. You see, by putting their trust in God, Ruth and Naomi experienced the benefit of receiving both an earthly and an eternal reward. Ruth was redeemed from poverty and destitution, and she was included in the lineage of Christ. Ordinary people, ordinary lives, broken lives, apparently defeated, hopeless. And God is weaving in and changing their stories and moving them and taking them where He wanted them to be so that His purposes would be accomplished. The same is true of our lives. Though there may be times where we feel discouraged or even defeated, either by as a result of our own doing or maybe by circumstances that were beyond our control, God never ceases to exercise control over your life and your circumstance. Let me say it again. God never ceases to exercise control over your life and your circumstances. That's the assurance that we have. In good times, in bad times, God never ceases to exercise control over our lives. And He is placing us, He's moving things and allowing things to take place and even redeeming some of the own things that we do to places where He wants us to be. And in the process, and this is important, in the process He's shaping us, He's refining us, He's strengthening and building our character. He's making us more mature and more like Christ. Why? So that in the end His name will be made famous. It's for His own glory and His own sake. He does it because He wants others to watch you and to see you and to see Christ in you and His power being manifest in you. The job offer, the promotion, the raise, He did it. The restored relationship, the marriage, He did it. The healing, He did it. The daily provision, it was God who did it. The green card interview, it was God who did it. He is the one who is comforting you. He is near you. Even when things are not easy, He did it. It's for His own glory and His fame. And what an amazing opportunity that you and I have to point others to Him as they watch, as they witness His power at work in our lives. Like Boaz, who put into practice what he believed to be true of God's action towards people, we must be agents through whom others also find redemption. Now, Naomi is blessed. The family name is preserved. There is a child. Now, she's taken care of until the rest of her life. Ruth is rewarded for her trust in the Lord, and we see a beautiful story of redemption. Now, I understand that not all stories have a happy ending like this. And I'm not even thinking they should. And I'm not saying that just God is going to do exactly how He worked here in this story. But what we can see and what we can say with certainty is that the book of Ruth reminds us of God's providential care, His sovereignty. It reminds us, it points to God's control over everything that happens in the world and in our lives. Even though stories won't end the same way, we can attest to God's sovereignty, and that, my friends, doesn't change. God is sovereign. He was sovereign here. He will continue to be sovereign here in your life stories, in your kids, and your grandkids, and your great-grandkids, because He is sovereign. It's His character. It's the essence of who He is. So though the story may not end the same way, God is in control. He is sovereign. He is orchestrating details. He's moving pieces. And He will end the way He wants it to end. It didn't end how Naomi expected it to end. She had no idea what was going to happen in Moab, losing her husband and 2 sons. But God had everything under control. He saw what Naomi didn't see when all that took place. And He sees what you and I cannot see right now in our present circumstances. God sees above and beyond that. He sees the future that we don't see it. Now we have a choice. We have a choice to decide to just kind of drop everything and do it on our own, or to trust a God who promises to be with us every single day and every single time. He won't leave us. He won't abandon us. He will accomplish His purposes. He sees the end from the beginning. He will accomplish His purposes regardless of our imperfections and our failures. Did you hear that? God will accomplish His purposes regardless of my imperfections and failures, and He will do the same regardless of yours. More than a love story between Ruth and Boaz, the book of Ruth is a story of God's extravagant love for us. Listen to this. Ephesians 2, 1 through 3 says this, "And you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, this spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and we were by nature children of wrath like the rest of mankind." This is us. This is our spiritual condition. And you and I are also unable to pay the demanded price for our freedom from sin that enslaves us and that would ultimately lead us to death. We could not redeem ourselves. No good deeds, no payment of gold or silver could ever be sufficient to set sinners free. We couldn't do it on our own. 1 Peter 1:18 tells us that Jesus was the only one that could have purchased our redemption. Jesus is the only one who could have purchased our redemption. You were redeemed from the worthless ways inherited from your forefathers, not with perishable things such as silver or gold, but what? With the precious blood of Jesus, like that of a lamb without blemish or spot. Jesus did it for us. Jesus purchased our redemption with His own life. And those who put their faith in Him will be saved. He is our kinsman-redeemer. And this costly, very costly, yet free gift of grace is received through faith alone in Christ alone. So I want you to close your eyes and bow your heads for just a moment. I don't know where you stand. I don't know where you find yourself in your journey this morning. I don't know what life circumstances you're facing, what challenges you're encountering. I don't know the challenges that you have encountered over the past few weeks or months. But for those of you who feel like giving up, whose life circumstances have made you bitter, maybe like Naomi was, you lost so much, you don't understand, and you find yourself hopeless. Now, my encouragement to you this morning, I urge you today to fix your eyes on Jesus, who is the initiator and perfecter of our faith. Instead of doubting God's goodness, I urge you to trust His character, not your circumstances. God has not lost control of your life. He will, again, never leave nor forsake you. He's sovereign over all things, and He is working all things together for your good and for His glory, according to His purposes. He loves you unconditionally. He loves you so much that He sent Jesus, His only Son, to die on that cross so that you could have eternal life. Jesus redeemed you. He paid the price that you and I could never afford to pay, to set you free from the bondage of sin. No matter where you find yourself this morning, I ask you, do not lose heart, and I pray that you won't. Take refuge under the Lord's wings, and you will experience His love and His kindness, His amazing favor towards you like never before. Would you trust His providential care? Surrender every area of your life to Him and let Him lead your steps. But perhaps there's some in this room today that need to make a commitment to follow Christ and to pledge allegiance to Him, to surrender your life to His Lordship. And I pray that you will do that today, to trust Him unreservedly. I want to pray for you. If that's you, if you want to make that decision today, I want to pray for you. The Bible says that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. Again, salvation cannot be earned by being good. It cannot be purchased for any amount of money. On the contrary, it is the free gift that is received by faith alone in Jesus Christ alone.